All right, I got Kashif Khan on the show for round three. Kashif is the CEO and founder of the DNA company. He's a biohacker, celebrity coach, longevity coach, and he's the author of the best-selling book, The DNA Way. Kashif, welcome back to the show.
Good to be here again, man. It's been too long.
Yeah, I am a huge fan of you. Just talking to you about your Instagram and how literally I watched you go from, I don't want to say zero followers, but maybe you had like 10,000, but you went from like 10,000 to like 432,000 followers in like a year. And it was all done organically. I watched you grow, and it was done just really because you're putting out great information and the reels look nice. They're professionally done, but the information you're providing is just, you're one of the few people I literally watched the entire reel. And that means you're doing something right. I think you're really giving good information, and it's well studied. It's not sensationalism. It's really good stuff in the alternative health world and people that are looking to reverse their age and longevity, anti-aging, but also the detox and some of the health concerns we should have. You are crushing it, man. I just really want to acknowledge you. So thank you.
No, thanks, man. It was never intentional. So honestly, we run a clinical practice, and every day we're dealing with people that are stuck. Like my doctor can't help me. What's wrong? And we figure it out. And it's some toxin. It's some hormone disrupting chemical. It's something that was in their home. Something that was so fundamentally root cause that was being masked with medication. So I just started getting on Instagram talking about the stuff that I saw just to warn people. Like, you need to know this and you need to know this. And just the list never finished. There's still more that people need to know, right? And that's really all it is. And I think because of, I didn't, like you said, year and a half ago, I didn't even have a social media account. Never used it because for me, it wasn't a personal thing. It's more just to let the world know what's going on. And I guess people want to know.
Yeah. And so, for anybody that doesn't know, you didn't watch the last two episodes we've done. You have a company called the DNA Company. And your book, The DNA Way, talks about how to unlock the secrets of your genes, reverse disease, slow aging, and achieve optimal wellness. I've done your DNA test. Man, I did it probably like 3 years ago. Got some really key insights. You're also, just for people that don't know, you're a practitioner who says, hey, if you're really concerned about your health and you want to live better, live more optimal, there's millions of things you can do. Gut test, organic acids test, hormonal test. But in your opinion, let's start with the DNA. The DNA is the first thing you should be starting with, more or less. Is that right?
Yeah, and this is from me having gone through it as somebody that needed to heal themselves, right? So I had multiple conditions. I wasn't in the industry. I was in the startup world. I helped technology startups grow, and I got really sick, and I had to heal myself. And it was my DNA that opened my eyes to all the stuff that I was sort of trialing and erroring, figuring out what actually fits, that I could hyper hone in and personalize what's first of all what's actually broken, and then what solution do I actually need, which allowed me to save money, time, energy, and just focus on what works. And now I'm good. I'm in the best state I've ever been.
Yeah. I'm curious for you, what do you think are some of the most surprising insights that you've discovered about the link between DNA and chronic illness, especially after analyzing over 7,000 DNA results?
Yeah, so the study we did was we spent 3 years with 7,000 people, and that was where we actually researched hands-on months of clinical interaction with those people to actually measure results. And here's something interesting. When you look at a gene called GSTM1, which is a driver of glutathione activity in the gut, it helps your gut prevent toxins from causing irritation, inflammation, etc. We had a challenge because when we were setting up our lab, the lab technicians and us, the sort of inside guys that did the research, didn't agree. They're like, there's no way this data is correct. There's something wrong. The lab's not working because there was too many people getting a specific result. Then we realized, because the mass population data says about 5% of people have a gene variant here, right? What does that mean? That your gut doesn't have this detox system. But we were finding that 49% of people in our data pool didn't have it, and 46% of people had a minus 50% version. So nearly 100% had really bad gut function. Didn't match the 5%. It was literally the flip opposite. Then we realized, wait a second, our data is studying sick people. It's not studying the general population. And what are we actually saying? That 95% of people that have a chronic disease have a gut issue. They're directly connected. And if your gut doesn't detoxify and it gets inflamed and becomes leaky, the toxic substrates that then leave through these permeable tight wall junctions, as they're called, that make up the lining, wreak havoc everywhere. And then there's inflammation head to toe. And so it's those types of unique insights. We had this blessing of working with professional athletes, celebrities, CEOs, and people that have various chronic conditions. So we're seeing the genome in the context of that person, not just as a general data point.
Kashif, okay, so to that example with the GST gene and abnormalities there, and you're seeing all these sick people manifest. So,
Yeah.
what's just the simple solution? I mean, if someone were to get that information from you, what are they then told to do with it? Is it, oh, well, then you should be on the carnivore diet, or you should be taking more L-glutamine in your diet because it's going to help keep intact that intestinal barrier. You need more prebiotics or probiotics. I don't know. Like, what is
Yeah.
a typical thing they might learn based on that data?
So that's one area where I think genetics got things wrong, where it's like, here's a gene that says something, now what? And I don't think that's enough. You need to look at all the systems because the human body, it's all interconnected, intersecting. And if you don't solve all the problems, you don't solve any problem. And this is why people get to 60%, 70%, and then some other problem starts or it lingers and you can't really cure yourself, quote unquote, right? So what I would do is if I find this red flag or any red flag, I then go look at everything else. And I also support that. And it may be that, okay, first of all, yes, you need to heal the gut. Most likely the gut is leaky. That can get tested to be verified, but you do need some level of fasting to repair. You do need some level of aloe vera, collagen, glutamate, all these things that then go repair the gut, right? We also need to kick up glutathione activity because if we're saying that your genes are telling us that you're lacking glutathione activity, we need to support that. So there's other genes that you can go look to tell you how to support glutathione activity. Do you actually add glutathione? Do you add precursors like NEC or milk thistle that just get to work? So it's a more functional map as opposed to single gene, single direction. And if you use it that way, you not only solve the problem you're trying to solve, but you end up solving other things that are symptoms of the same central hub.
Yeah, go figure, huh? Right?
Yeah.
I love how you said that the systems biology, right? And
Yeah.
I made the mistake in my early, health journeys of just trying to fix one category, like you said, gut health, and I kept running into just getting a little bit better, but never getting fully better until I finally realized what you just said. Yeah, there's a systems approach, and if you're not tackling it from a systems approach, you're gonna keep falling into those pit holes. And I gotta say, and this is not to throw shade on Gary Brecka, but I will throw some shade. I think he's one of those guys, which I love that he is I love that he's a force in the health world,
Yeah.
and that he's making people become more conscious of their health. I think he does a great job of that. But I've heard him say some things in the past and even recently. I think he's just completely wrong when he speaks about DNA, and a lot of it's just old information. And he's talking about MTHFR genes like they are the end all be all, and they're not, right? I mean, wouldn't you say? I mean, and again, not to throw shade on this guy, but I think he's a guy who's getting it a little bit wrong. To your point.
So methylation is what he talks about, and it's a very important system that gets ignored by most clinical practice. But because it's ignored doesn't mean that it's everything. It is one part. Just like if we only deal with the gut and if you only deal with inflammation, you dealt with one part of the body. So it's kind of like saying, I want to optimize this car, let me go buy a tire, right? Okay, what about everything else? You also have a detox system driven through glutathione. You also have neurochemicals of the brain that can be mapped genetically to know exactly where you stand. You also have hormones that drive all these processes. You also have metabolism. You also have sleep. You have recovery. So, and mitochondrial function. You can spend an entire session just talking to someone about their mitochondrial function, not even start on methylation. So, very important. What does methylation do, just for people that don't know? It is a form of detox. So it takes non-water soluble toxins, converts them and makes them water soluble so you can pee and sweat and poop them out. It is managing the conversion of nutrients, and this is what really Gary Brecka talks about, is like, hey, what vitamin do you need, what this do you need, which is true, but it is one part of the equation, and it's not 90%, it's 5 or 10%, right? And methylation is also anti-inflammatory response. How do you put out the fire? And the last thing, which he doesn't talk about, is it's managing your gene expression. So as we're walking around doing our thing, you're constantly exposed to environment, nutrition, lifestyle. There's inputs. and your body's constantly surveying the environment to know what to give you in that exact moment. Do you need adrenaline? Do you need testosterone? Do you need calm and peace? Do you need rejuvenation? What are you trying to do? And your genes turn their dials and they speed up and slow down to give you exactly what you need. That's gene expression. So methylation also controls that. So very important system, but it's not the only thing to address. It's one of many, many things to address.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I wanted to ask you this round too about mental health. That's a big,
Yeah.
big topic right now, especially coming out of the pandemic. In the last, whatever, 4 years, we've seen a big jump in mental health issues, anxiety, depression. Jonathan Haidt, a book I've been recommending, Anxiety Generation, talking about cell phones and how we've also created an anxiety generation based on phones and social media. And I'm just curious how DNA can play a role in mental health and just emotional well-being, how you see that factor in.
Yeah, we've been studying that, and I've noticed that a lot of the clinical cases we're working on, where they're actually engaged with us as patients, and I personally hands-on work with people coaching, there's been a shift in what they actually need. And we can't jump straight to putting out the fire. Most people are coming in not even knowing that their nervous system needs healing before we can even talk about the problem that they came to solve. That they are stuck in a trauma loop, right? Why? Your genes don't change or evolve. Our DNA is tens of thousands, actually a couple 100,000 years old, haven't changed. There's no evidence of evolution in humans, right? So, which means in order to cope, in order for the next generation to be able to deal with whatever threats you face, your genes can express the thing we were just talking about. So they don't change, but they can temporarily speed up or slow down to give you what you need. That's gene expression. So trauma is driven by a gene called ADRA2B, which determines, in a nutshell, the efficiency of your adrenaline response. So when you're in that aggressive, adrenaline-induced, negative stimulus moment, did you imprint the emotion or not? Like literally, the next time that you're talking to that person again, you see that expression again, you're in that location again, do you remember what it felt like? Or do you only remember the intellectual component? Then there's also the clearance of the chemical, which is how long did it last? Were you in that moment for a very quick time where you may remember the feeling, but there's very fragmented details around what it all means? Or were you in it far too long where there's a lot of weight to the context? Right? So between these two things, that's one. I can talk about many things, but this is an easy one. Now, put this in the context of COVID, where irrespective of what we now know and what some of us knew earlier than others, in the beginning, nobody knew what the hell was going on, right? The world is over. The economy is falling apart. Is grandma going to die? Am I ever seeing my kids again? Those are the types of things that were going on for months. And when those types of extreme loss of control, deep trauma type and trauma inducing type moments are happening, your body starts to turn on the trauma expression because it thinks that you're in war. Remember, our DNA is old. It only understands famine and war. Those are the threats. So it thinks that you're either starving or you're about to go to battle. So it turns on the defenses for that, and it wants you to not make that mistake and not lose. It's really easy for your body to learn and remember trauma. It's hard for your body to forget. It very intentionally is designed to remember because, again, war and famine, it wants you to never have these things happen again. And it thinks that's what just happened. So a lot of people now, fast forward 2, 3, 4 years later, are still stuck in the trauma loop of 8 months of lockdown, not knowing that that's the reason they're sick. When you put the body into fight or flight, when the nervous system is on edge, ready to respond to whatever the next threat is, there's no rest and recovery. The body doesn't repair in fight or flight. It's set up to do other things. Go literally fight. Testosterone, things of that nature, not rest and recovery and rejuvenation. Those don't happen at the same time. So having said all that, there's work for most people to do that they may not even recognize in calming their nervous system before they go address whatever they're trying to address.
Yeah, now that's fantastic, right? Now, again, so someone finds out that they have this adaptation of this gene, and something that we talked about early on, I think in our first episode, and which blew me away, was as a first responder and a former police officer, you had told me that there are genes that we know that if a first responder or a Navy SEAL goes into battle, he will for sure come out get PTSD. Like we just
Yeah.
know it. The genetics show it, and we've proven that. That blew my mind because I know, having been in an area like Oakland, California, very busy. I worked there. I was in an officer-involved shooting, and I had done many things. And I had a 15-year career where I saw a lot of negative things, let's say.
Yeah.
And I would tell you, Kashif, I feel fine overall.
Yeah.
Granted, there's plenty of stuff probably wrong with me. However, I saw guys go to literally one freaking call,
Yeah.
and it was like a suicide. And the guy like spun out and then retired after his career for medical reasons. I used to always think the guy's just freaking weak, man, or he's a
Yeah.
scammer and he's just trying to get over on the system. I'm like, you know how much stuff I've been to, and this guy went to one freaking call and now he's got PTSD. Like, give me a break. But to your
Yeah.
point, like this is actually, we can actually prove this.
Yeah, there's a whole other side to it, which is we just talked about trauma, which is remembering the feeling, but there's also the weight and meaning of the thing, right? So you
Yeah.
may be able to feel it, but feeling something versus how much weight does that thing have, those two things are the factors of how do you respond. And so BDNF, brain-derived neurotropic factor, speaks to your brain's ability to have neuroplasticity, develop new neurons, new neural pathways, learn new things, develop new skills. But if you don't do a good job there, and there's a bit of a lag in your brain's ability to develop literal new physical hardware, new neurons to process new concepts and thoughts, then that thing means a lot more to you. Whatever you're experiencing, we all know it's good or bad. How much weight does it have? To what degree is it good or bad? And some people experience what we call a shell shock. It's not trauma, it's in the moment, nervous system freeze. Nervous system is frozen because that thing has so much weight, I can't move past it until I resolve it. And that resolution can take time, especially if your BDNF genetics are bad, where you don't actually make the physical hardware to go resolve it. So this is where a lot of people get stuck, and I can keep going. There's many profiles, but there are very specific profiles that, for different reasons, can't handle the same context, and other profiles that thrive in a context, and like you, look like you're Superman,
Yeah.
right?
Okay, now on that note, right? Let's say you do find someone that is their BDNF is not upregulated. I believe if I remember correctly, mine was highly upregulated. I think I was okay there. I don't remember the trauma gene for the one that knocks you out if you have like a
Yeah.
big emotional event. The weight of it, as you mentioned. If you find somebody and in that category, right? How could you tackle this person or assess them and say, okay, great, we know this about you. Now, here's how we can prevent, hopefully, that
Yeah.
if you do get in an officer involved shooting or something like that, you don't spin out. Instead, you're more upregulated because we're giving you supplementation to increase BDNF, or we're doing meditation or some other processes to help you for when that moment occurs, you're better optimized. Is there a way to do that,
Yeah.
knowing that information?
So this is a perfect example of what's now possible, right? What we used to think is genetics equals the problem, propensity. You have an 80% chance of dementia, 80% chance of trauma. That's what we used to think. Now it's like
And
this is a
gosh, if
priority.
that's still happening, by the way, with
Oh
this
yeah, yeah.
freaking people in Alzheimer's and stuff, that's all I keep hearing.
Yep.
We talked about that on the last podcast. They're like, oh, you have a 90% chance of getting Alzheimer's because you have the APO4 allele,
Yeah,
and that's
yeah.
it. And that was that famous actor who just like quit. I mean, it's ridiculous. But
Yeah.
anyway, yeah.
And so what we now know is that your genes speak to priority. Here's a job that your body does well and a job that your body doesn't do well. Now, the choices that you're going to make in environment, nutrition, and lifestyle will determine the net outcome. Let me give you an example. So in Finland, Finland as an ethnic population has likely the highest bad BDNF per capita in the world. So, which would mean that everything means a lot, everything's a big deal, country full of drama queens, right? Because if everything means a lot, everything's a problem, they're always going to be fighting, angry, upset, frustrated because it all has a lot of weight. Finland is also voted the happiest country in the world, consistently over and over. Those two things don't add up. Bad BNF, happiest country in the world. Why? Finland also has the highest use of sauna per capita of any country in the world. So they do this thing religiously as a cultural habit because when they don't, they feel horrible. And so they make sure they don't miss it. Why does it work? Because the heat shock protein drives an upregulation in BDNF. So your genes are not meant to be a prescription for problems. They're meant to be a guide to tell you what your habit should be. Because you now know what biology doesn't work, and you can then identify what supplement, what activity, what relationship, what location and room or whatever is the best thing for you in all the choices you make. And simple anecdote that an entire country's genome expression is shifted because of one simple habit.
Dude, that is so good. I love that you shared that. That's amazing. I was just thinking also, I work in, with a lot of driven people, entrepreneurs, alpha males, if you want to call them that, people that are just go-getters like myself that want to go out and crush it in the world, create a lot of impact. But I help them because usually a lot of times they're struggling in their marriage, their relationships, their connection with their kids. I was one of those guys. And I'm curious, and I know you work with a lot of these CEOs, visionaries, the entrepreneurs, the Olympic athletes, the celebrities. They didn't get there for no reason. They're at the top of their game because they are driven. But we also see that maybe there's some areas of their life, like emotional intelligence or being present, that is a big problem. Have you seen that as well as an archetype, and that a lot of times you can transcribe it back to the DNA? And then the question is, what do we do with that? Like, how have you been able to, any examples there where you've been able to help some of these go-getters become more of a better dad and father and connect more with their wife and children?
So it's no surprise that you see the highest achievers are also more likely to be suicidal or alcoholics. Why do I say that? Because why does somebody take the risk to achieve that great reward? Because they are wired for risk-reward behavior. What does that mean? Their relationship with pleasure, dopamine, is disrupted. They don't have good dopamine genetics. They can't bind dopamine. They don't have dopamine last long enough in their minds so they can't experience the duration of pleasure they should. And so whatever they're getting isn't satisfying. And if you're not satisfied, you're going to seek more. And some people will go down the addiction route because of pleasure. And some people will go down the achievement route because of reward. And dopamine will give you either one of those. And you don't need both, by the way. So this is why you'll see high performance people that got to where they are because they had to take the risk in the first place and make the decision to do the crazy thing that most people wouldn't. Also, when they don't get that hit, have a much bigger valley to crash into. Because their baseline is low. And they don't like to be there. It doesn't feel good. This is why they take the big risk and get that dopamine hit. So, yeah, very consistently. And now what would you do about it? Well, we know that cold dysregulation is a massive dopamine upregulator, and this is why you'll see all these crazy CEOs cold plunging all the time, right? And a regular everyday guy is like, I tried it, it sucks, I don't know what they want to do with it, right? It's because that person actually is genetically wired to feel good from that cold because their dopamine is so low. This is why the extreme skiing and the extreme sports type stuff are connected to extreme achievement. Then we know there's simple supplements like L-theanine, GABA, adaptogens that help your brain balance neurochemical levels, right? I know that there's a gentleman that I was working with who just hated the idea of a cold plunge. And when I looked at his genetics, there's a gene that drives thermal regulation, so your body's ability to manage its core temperature. And he had a bad version of that gene. So I actually had to tell him, you know what, you're right, don't do the cold plunge. Because over time, it's actually going to make you gain weight. The exact opposite of what, for example, Gary Brecka says, that it strips the fat off your body, right? Yes, if you have good genetics for it, but for him, it would have caused him to gain weight. So instead, I told him, take a bowl of ice water 30 minutes before sleep, and you're dipping your face in it. Because you're mimicking what the caveman experienced, which is, if you go out in the cold, you're wrapped in fur, your body didn't feel it, your face felt it. And then all of a sudden your body gives you the neurochemicals to be ready for that reward-seeking behavior of going and hunting a buffalo, right? So that's the one thing he did to make himself 30 minutes before going to sleep, 30 minutes after waking up, and it gave him more of that Zen state during the day.
Dude, So, so good. I was laughing as you were talking about the go-getter entrepreneur because I remember when we went through my profile, I think those were some of the things you had mentioned
Yeah.
that makes me a great entrepreneur. I had no idea. And again, I was a 9 to 5 worker for 15 years before I stepped into entrepreneur. But you said, hey, there's no accident that this is what you do now based on your DNA. It actually shows that you would
Yep.
actually be a very good entrepreneur. And it's just funny. And the whole dopamine thing is right up. I remember our talk, and
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was to the T who I was. So that's very, very funny. Um, Talk to me a little bit about your new program. You've got a really cool program called Live to 120. And if people want to learn more about that, like why'd you come up with the name? I know why, but talk to me about Live to 120, what that's all about, and what people can find in there.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of what I do is based on responding to nonsense, right? So I don't have, I don't have a particular, other than making sure that I share knowledge. Like I don't miss a day of posting a video and sharing. That's my purpose. Everything I do in my work and my business is all a reaction to fixing stupidity. And what do I mean by that? Is that I am part of the biohacking community, I believe, but a lot of what I hear I don't agree with. A lot of the one size fits all, a lot of the sort of this worked for this guy, now everybody go do it. Definitely not true. And I also think that the I'm going to live to 180, 200, 250, I also don't agree with. You know, I don't think that it's impossible. I just think that goes beyond human form. That's when you get into cyborg territory, right? So humans, if you look at the physical structure of DNA, so every one of your 50 trillion cells has this code inside, it's an instruction manual, and the actual DNA form, when it gets oxidized, damaged, that's aging. So aging is the oxidation, damage, and degradation of your DNA and the cells that encompass them. And then you start to see it outwardly, physically, with your skin and your hair, etc. But it's really that damage. So your DNA has these protective caps or bumpers that are called telomeres that are designed to absorb the wear and tear and prevent your DNA from getting damaged. When you look at the physical state of those telomeres, they are designed to last 120 years. We know this. Harvard talks about it, different universities talk about it, there's publications about it. That's how long they're designed to last, which tells me that's how long we're supposed to live. The average life expectancy in the United States is now mid 70s. It used to be higher, it dropped by 3 years. We can talk about why, but it just dropped by 3 years, first time ever, right? And so now all of a sudden, why in the wealthiest empire that's ever existed, the most money that's ever been spent on healthcare at any given time, $4.3 trillion a year, do we have people not getting anywhere near the 120 on average? And what I believe is before we start talking about all of these things we need to add, from supplements to red light to sauna to etc., what are the things you're doing that are taking away the God-given gift of 120 that you already have? You were born with that. You're designed for it. Your physical structure is designed for it. The things you breathe, the things you eat, the relationships you have, the hormones you disrupt, those are the things that chip away and take away 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year, 5 year, and then give you in your last 10 years lower quality of health span, lower quality of life also. So what I work on is using the unique genome of an individual to figure out what biology is broken. Forget about the symptoms, forget about the goal. What biology is broken? And if I know how to optimize that, like for example, BDNF is broken, go jump in the sauna, right? Simple example. Dopamine is broken, take some L-theanine. Let's map out all the broken biology and tell you exactly what your habit should be. And 120 is already there. If you look at the blue zones where people consistently live to 100, 110, 115, 120, there's no cryotherapy. They're not taking 120 supplements a day. They don't even know what a podcast is, right? They have habits that are aligned to their DNA and their ancestral habits because they are of that local jurisdiction. They do what their ancestors used to do, and let me give you an example. And the outcome of what they're seeking isn't life extension. It's more maintenance of the high quality life they already have. So that you have to think within that context. Don't add things that take life away. So if I give you an example of one of their habits, Japanese have this concept that they call ikigai, which means sense of purpose. And if you go to Okinawa, you'll see while the kids are walking to school, there's a grandma that stands there with a stop sign. And you'll see that once the kids get to the school bus bench, that there's a grandpa sweeping the leaves off of the bench. This is not a vocation, it's not a job, it's a sense of purpose. I'm an integral part of the community. And that one thing tells your brain that your brain, by the way, has no clue what's going on. It's responding to your thoughts that I need to stay young. I still have a job to do. Right? You see them walking, all like complex walking. I don't mean on a treadmill. I mean they're walking up and down hills. They're walking through villages and forests. Complex walking. Half of your nervous system is in your legs, driving complex thought back to your brain, forcing you to stay young. So these are very basic, free things that people can do. But all I'm saying is that, in as much as yes, it's benefit. I do all the stuff. I take supplements. I do all the treatments. I do all the stuff. But I also know, here's all the things that I should never do. Here's the toxic people I don't talk to. Here's the toxic environment I don't enter. Here's the toxic food I don't eat. Here's the toxic chemicals I don't breathe. So in as much as you're adding, you also have to remove, because that's what took the years away.
So crucial, because I'm listening to you talk about just the blue zones, and you're right. And I'm looking around even my office and all the things I have, red light and vibration platforms and all these things, and they're great. But it's like I've added more things into my life so that I could actually live a more stressful life. I'm like, I know I live a stressful life. I'm going to even do more stress. It's like I'm buying a red light panel so that I can go out and do more stressful things. Why not just live like a person in the blue zones, live the lifestyle, and then every now and then add some red light to your life? But I'm doing kind of the opposite, and I think a lot of us are.
Yeah. So red light is a perfect example. So I think it's a beneficial tool. I have one at home, right? Useful. But the way that it's being promoted, I mean, we've replaced one pill for another, which is don't worry about how to prevent the problem. Here's the thing that will take the pain away. Right? And so with red light as an example, what are we talking about? Supporting mitochondrial function. What disrupts mitochondrial function is oxidative stress. The genetics of oxidative stress, superoxide dismutase or SOD2, determines how efficiently you clear oxidants from the cell, and your glutathione pathway clears those oxidants from the bloodstream, and then you sweat them out, pee them out, poop them out, right? So if your genetics are bad there, you don't deal with oxidation well. I can't tell you how many pro athletes I've talked to that I said, hey, I think you should go get a scan for plaque in your arteries. They're like, what are you talking about? I'm in my late 20s and I have the best doctors, best training in the world. I said, that's what I'm worried about, is you have bad genetics around oxidative stress, you have bad detox, and you're in constant cardiovascular high intensity activity causing inflammation and taking in more oxygen, which means you're making more oxidants, the free radicals that your genes don't clear. And lo and behold, they have endothelial inflammation, cardiac inflammation. That was the early first step to cardiovascular disease. This is why you see like soccer players that drop dead at 35 and Olympic sprinters that have a heart failure at 35, because they compressed decades of cardiovascular activity into a short time. So
and you're talking about even before 3 years ago. You're talking about before the myocarditis spike we saw from this.
Yeah, before all that. That just makes it worse, but before all that. Okay. And now, why am I saying this? Because before even looking at red light, what is causing the damage to my mitochondria that I'm trying to repair? How did it get to this state? Because I was born with solid, healthy, robust, large mitochondria. When I was 19, I could run forever and not get exhausted. What happened? Why did the mitochondria change? So I would say, in as much as these things are useful and beneficial, it's important to understand what takes energy, time, and life away from you. The habits that you don't know are hurting you, because your genetics are unique and your threats are unique.
Yeah, so good. And I remember that even on my scan, I came back as someone who would not do well with lots of bouts of cardio, and strength training would be much better for me. So yeah, great stuff there. I wanted to ask you, knowing what you know now, what are you doing to live to 120? What are some of the practices, rituals, biohacks, or things that you like to do on a regular basis? And again, we know you're your own individual, but just what have you seen that you're like, this makes sense, I think, for me to be doing on a regular basis?
Well, one big overarching theme is simplicity, right? And one thing I've learned is there's the reason why there's so much confusion. What do I do is because there's too many options. We're in the generation where you Uber Thai food for breakfast and sushi for dinner, and you still don't know what to order, right? And I eat eggs every day. I eat meat every day. I don't really have that many options in my fridge. And that's one basic thing. It's like, I post videos about stuff and be like, what are we supposed to eat? There's nothing left. There's nothing left because you want too many choices. That's the problem. And we were never meant to live that way. And understanding the systems in your body and what they need from you. And if your habits themselves gave you those things, then you don't need to add all the crazy supplements and get the therapies. What do I mean by that? Simple example, that our ancestors used to farm food and they used to yield the harvest, and it was far too much food for them to eat at that time, so they needed to store it. And in order to store plants, they would ferment them, pickle them, rot them. And then they would last for a long time. Which meant that our body assumes that we have a daily dose of fermented food populating our gut microbiome. And now we eat kale salads that don't do that, right? So we still eat the plants, but the context has changed. So I'm saying your existing habits, the thing you already do, you already eat, you already move, you already have relationships, do those things properly. And start to remove the threat, because again, you were already born with a gift of 120. The choices you're making are taking those years away. So we can use DNA to hyper personalize and kind of shortcut all that so you don't need to guess. But I would start by thinking, what would life look like if I was a cave person? What is that? I would be sleeping on the ground, meaning that I'm grounded for 8 hours a day. I now sleep on the second story of a home on a bed that's flying in the sky. I lost that. I lost my 8 hours of grounding. So you need to add some grounding. It also meant that every night before I slept, I saw the amber glow of fire in the pitch dark. And guess what? Our brain is still relying on that signal to bind melatonin. Instead, you have a TV with blue light, the exact opposite spectrum. Right? So simple things that were meant to be part of our daily routine have all been removed. And that's why I say simplicity is key. But the other thing I'll tell you, just for the juicy bits about what do I actually do in terms of biohacks beyond my daily routine, a lot less than I used to. I can tell you that. I used to do everything. And I do a lot less. Now what I do is, because I've maintained my habits to be aligned to who I actually feel better now. I've noticed my skin is better than what it used to be recently, because I'm not overloading my system with 100 supplements that no food ever provided nutrient in that dose, ever. But I do still take nitric oxide, I'll take minerals. That's one thing that I think everyone needs to do. The soil is dead, the food is dead, you're not getting minerals. So everyone I think needs to take some sort of minerals. I still take my vitamin D.
And Kashif, are you talking about like Beam, like something like
Yeah.
fulvic and humic? Because I've been doing a lot. I've come to the conclusion, I think, with you, is that everybody should be on this, based on the fact that the soil is ruined and glyphosate toxicity, and we know humic complex can help pull some of that out. And so I've been taking that on a regular basis. I was just curious if, when you say minerals, you typically mean
I think
fulvic.
Beam is probably the best product out there right now. There's some people, there's different ways to get minerals, like Shilajit, sea moss, for example.
Yeah.
Women that have thyroid issues, for example, you might decide to get your minerals from sea moss because it also has iodine, a lot of selenium, and things you need. Some people that, for example, have a scare about cancer, maybe you have cancer in your family, you might decide to get your minerals from spirulina and chlorella because they have certain compounds that are cancer fighting. So you can be a little bit more specific, but Beam is fantastic for sure, right? So so there's that. There's nitric oxide. There's vitamin D. I'll once in a while lean on some berberine if I have to go to like a wedding and eat some cake and just be a nice guy for the day, right? And then I'll also take red light for sure, sauna for sure. That's one thing I'll never give up. The sauna has so many benefits beyond what we think. Sun exposure, making sure that I get out barefoot in the morning and in the evening and just get that hit, right? And I will once in a while go to some location where somebody's invited me to hit some oxygen or hit some cold plunge or whatever. But it's just not a daily habit. The one big thing I would say is I've changed my training routine a lot, where I train a lot less, but with far more intensity. So when I leave the gym, my nervous system doesn't understand what just happened. It's like I'm wobbling down the stairs. But I'm not doing it every day anymore. I used to go every day, but I have to go to the gym. So frustrated if I don't make it on time, part of my routine. But I wasn't pushing my body hard enough. So now instead, I push really hard 2 or 3 times a week max. And I'm finding much better outcomes.
Yeah. Wow. Very
Yeah.
cool. I love that you said that. I had a question about the Live O2 machine because that's one of those biohacks that we see at all the conventions, and they do you supplement with oxygen as you're doing the bike, and we know oxygen is supposed to be very good. But you just mentioned something interesting about if your DNA profile matches a certain profile, that could even that be detrimental? Getting that too much oxygen, and doing that type of cardio.
Yeah, so it's unique how our body handles that. But in taking oxygen in, your mitochondria are constantly taking oxygen, combining them with nutrition to make energy. That's what happens. And in that process of taking oxygen and converting it into energy, there's a smoke, a byproduct. Just like burning any fuel, there's always a smoke. And so more oxygen means more oxidant. And so if somebody has bad mitochondrial genetics or bad detox genetics and you're doing that activity, you have two choices. Either you stop or you add support like some mitochondrial level support or some glutathione support to help you clear those additional oxidants you just made. Now, having said that, it's not quite the same threat as high intensity exercise or running on a treadmill for 4 hours or playing soccer or things like that because the duration is short, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're going through these ups and downs of like a hard spike and then a recovery. And so even though it's heavy oxygen, the total load is not that bad.
What about even something like HBOT? Because that's oxygen, and we've seen there's been recent documentation in the longevity space about. I think there was a pretty long study similar to the sauna where it showed people's telomeres and like their DNA actually frickin' repairing doing HBOT. But if I'm someone who's prone to oxidants, again, could that be negative or in general? Do you
Yeah,
think
we
that
don't see a negative outcome there because that's different. So HBOT, the let's say the mechanism is slightly different. Just like, for example, adding oxygen to your blood. Some people do that, right? They'll oxygenate their blood.
or they
Different.
do ozone, right? Like
They'll
O3.
do ozone, like an
Yeah.
ozone pass, right? So different outcome. We don't see the oxidation result. It's primarily through breath. It's that heavy breathing. Or what is oxidative stress? Oxidative stress is essentially imbalances. So I did too much exercise, but also I did too little.
Yeah.
It's I had too much stress or I had not enough stress. You need some to drive certain biochemistry. I overate, underate, overslept, underslept. So really your body is seeking the middle, this homeostasis. And whatever you're doing, and this is why even myself, okay, HBOT great, but I'm not going to do it every day unless if it's a cancer patient or dementia, okay, you need that acute response. But longevity and biohacking and health, you got to balance things a little bit.
Yeah, agreed. What are some of the things we talked about? What you're doing to upregulate yourself and live longer. One of the things you said is simplicity, and I also think of subtraction as well.
Yeah.
So what is like a non-negotiable or some of the things that you stay away from? And I'm thinking of like you talk a lot about this on Instagram and all your short form reels. Things that we really need to be concerned about in the future and stay away from. Things like glyphosate, the way they're changing our food, the vaccines,
Yeah.
all these things. So what are some of the things that you worry about, I guess maybe either in the future or like, hey guys, here's like a top 10 or top 5. You better stay away from these. These are wreaking havoc on you. You're not even aware of it.
Well, big one, and I say this because it's outside of people's awareness, they don't pay attention, is EMF. So the electronic pollution, which is constant, ubiquitous, it's everywhere. And that's why it's such a threat because it's just always there, right? Unlike food, cosmetics, whatever, it's when you use it. But EMF is just always on. And even
Yeah.
when you turn your Wi-Fi off, your neighbor's Wi-Fi is on. So some plan around mitigating EMF and making sure that you're not slowly frying yourselves. There's plenty of science now on you can take a live blood cell analysis put that blood in a petri dish and put it in a room with EMF, and all the blood cells coagulate and coin up together. And you can see the outcome and effect instantaneously. And then you remove the EMF, and they sort of unwind and open up in free flow. We've seen that data now, so that's a big one. The other one is hormone disruption. So not understanding, especially for women, how from your water to your pesticides to your Teflon coated frying pan to your yoga pants, how many things are mimicking estrogens as they enter your body, utilizing an estrogen docking station, messing up your hormone cascade, and then causing everything from fibromyalgia issues to infertility to 30% of American women now need IVF to get pregnant, in vitro fertilization. That number is absurd.
Agreed.
Right? 30%. So, and it's because of hormone disruption. Number three, I would say, definitely has to do with this lack of grounding. This one thing that we haven't, between our plastic shoes and between our homes and the way they're built, right? Between our lack of connection with nature, all of these things were lacking, and going beyond grounding, general connection with nature. So grounding is one part of your connection with nature. It's also being symbiotic with, trees, for example. Trees produce certain compounds that are antimicrobial and antibacterial that we're supposed to be breathing in, that we don't. Trees produce a frequency that when you're with them and you see them and you hear them, actually signal calm to your body. If you have anxiety and you walk into a forest, your anxiety is gone. Right? Unless you're lost in the forest without a map, that's a different problem, right? But the calming nature of nature is one thing we're missing. Another big one that seems to be hitting the United States hard is mold. And certain cities, for example, like Austin, it's almost impossible to not have mold in your home. It depends where you are. And so there's this sort of silent epidemic in the background of mold living in our guts. And it's not just the mold you breathe that's in your home, it's also the food supply. In fact, a good 25-ish% of our mold exposure is from the actual movement of food, like coffee being in a container, grains being shipped around the world in that nature of that dark, cold, damp container. That's where the mold develops. So food stuff, as they call it, the ingredients with which things are made out of, major proponent of mycotoxins thriving in your gut and taking over the body. Last one. Now, where do we go? Because this is the last one, so it's got to be good.
EMFs, plastics, mold. What else?
So the number 3 cause of death in the United States is medical error. It's doctors making mistakes. 14 of the 15 top causes of death, not including the number 3, which was medical error, are rooted in inflammation. So if you remove inflammation, which medical error is the same thing, you're there because you're sick, which is inflammation, you remove the top 15 reasons to die. And I say this because inflammation just doesn't happen. It's what you breathe, it's what you eat, it's the people you're surrounded by, it's the lack of recovery, and it's your hormones that potentially are toxic and causing inflammation. So if you can pay attention to what are the gaping holes in my boat that's letting water in and start plugging them. I have a bit of a bias because I use DNA to do that, but we use DNA to figure out like what exactly is not working biologically, and let's plug that hole. So that's the other big one I would say that is broad stroke, but if you just focus on tracking and dealing with inflammation, it's very hard to have a chronic disease.
Yeah, so good. So good, dude. Those are great. I know we got to wrap things up. I wanted to ask you one more question before you go, if you have time. And that is, are there any supplements or is there any tech, or just back to simplicity, grounding? Is there anything that you like to do to repair DNA? And what I'm thinking is, I know there's, again, sauna, I know helps repair the DNA, right? With the heat shock proteins. I think there's a device called the Eng3, which we see at all the biohacking conferences. And I think they talk about repairing DNA broken strands. NAD is in a supplement, I believe, that helps repair DNA. I'm not too sure. Anything that you've seen or that you're like, yeah, I can get behind this? There seems to be some good data behind that.
Yeah, one thing I really like is molecular hydrogen. And here's why I like it. Molecular hydrogen is the smallest molecule in the universe. So it can go anywhere in your body. And it's one of those few things that doesn't need an instruction. It just gets to work, and it has this very unique ability to only find, collect, and remove bad stuff. Some other things like that we use, like activated charcoal, glutathione, for example, simple examples, also pull out minerals and nutrients that you need. Molecular hydrogen doesn't do that. And the other cool thing about it is you can't overdose. So if you were to get, a machine, for example, you just keep breathing it all day. If you're like us sitting here on a podcast, we could be breathing it right now, right? So they'll
Do you like to breathe it, or have you noticed effects from breathing it versus drinking it? I just got one installed in my fridge, so I drink it daily. But
so here's the skinny on that, which is the majority of what is being pushed out there. I go back to Gary Brecka again, unfortunately. He's talking about these bottles where you push a button and it infuses hydrogen, right? The way so the science on hydrogen water, incredible. I 100% agree with it. The products that are being pushed to offer you hydrogen water are garbage. They don't work.
wow.
So unless you're infusing the hydrogen into the water, which the machines also do, so the machines that you breathe through also can pump and infuse hydrogen into the water, it's not stable. What does that mean? As soon as you open the lid, it's evaporating.
Yep.
How do they do it? You push a button, you see this kind of whirlwind in the thing, and you're making hydrogen. It's actually altering the pH balance, so the hydrogen becomes more bioavailable, which also means that it's ready to escape as soon as you open it up.
Wow.
So unless you push a button and gulp it down, you didn't get any. And even then, it's not so stable and not so bioavailable. Infusion is stable. It's there. It's permanent. And even when it gets into your body, it's much easier to use. So breathing, infusing, and there's certain companies that make molecular hydrogen supplements. They're nowhere near the dose, but they're still beneficial. So that's all I would say is be careful about your source. But that's the one.
So in general, Kashif, breathing is more beneficial in your point, just because, or if you could infuse it with the same machines. I know they do both. There's machines that do both, infuse and breathe. But it sounds like in general, you've even noticed better effects from breathing.
Yeah, it's constant. You can do it all day long, and you're getting a really solid dose.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Dude, that's awesome. And I know also for folks that don't know, you have plenty of guides, and you actually have all your recommended gear on the website. So if people want to see what molecular hydrogen machine you got behind and say, this is a good one. There's a lot of brands out there, but this is a good one. They can find that and plenty other resources too.
Yeah, and wherever possible, I ask these guys to give us discount codes to make sure people are saving money. So no guarantee or promise, but on many things, you'll find discount codes just because we asked them,
Yeah, really cool, man. Dude, I know I got to run, and so do you. This was so fun. I want to do another one with you, and like I said, we'll have my kids. The next one, I want to have my kids and my wife done, and we'll go over that. But until next time, talk to me. Tell everybody where they can find you, connect with you. Obviously on social, I mentioned your Instagram, but let them know where the best place to connect with you and the DNA company.
So my website my personal website and my Instagram are the same, kashkhanofficial.com or kashkhanofficial, and so KASHKHAN official is Instagram.com is my personal website. The DNA company is the company I founded. I actually don't run it anymore. About a year ago, we hired a brilliant CEO to take over and take all the science we build and sort of plug it into the healthcare world, which I don't claim to be an expert at. And now I have a lot more time to focus on what my purpose is, which is getting the word out there so people, don't get sick.
Yeah. Amazing. Kashif Khan, pleasure, brother. Thanks for being on the show again.
Pleasure, man. Yeah, good seeing you.
Likewise.